Welcome everyone to our club, My Life, My Business, with our room entitled Wish I Was Here. And just a reminder, we talk about whether it's in your life in general or in your business or in your career, how to be fully engaged. And there's a variety of topics that we touch on, but all of it is about being engaged with your life. And I mean, one of the things that is sometimes you don't love everything that's happening in your life, but it's your life, is being engaged in it, is embracing it. And in the end, what we're talking about is the evidence of all of this is enjoying your life. Um, Alistair is talking to us tonight. He's leading the topic. And as usual, I wait with bated breath and with excitement, with butterflies in my stomach, because I know Alistair is going to be challenging us and taking us on some sort of a journey. And the growth is in moving sometimes into unfamiliar territory. And when we find ourselves there, we know it's an opportunity for growth. So, welcome, Alistair. I want to hand over to you. And for those of you that have just joined us, welcome to all of you. Over to you, Alistair.
Thank you, Jacques. Absolute pleasure to speak to leaders. It's like coming into somebody's lounge, having a conversation with. Good to see everybody. I know you heard a little bit about this, but it's about how exposed to people when they arrive, when they enter into a room. From the minute go, you are different because of how they show up. Because they show up. Table, and I interview um, somebody, them for the same job. What's important to me is how each one of them show up. And often, how you show up has a bigger impact than what you have, your degrees and your education and your experience. And even with that, I find that people, what they have, like they've got education, they've got experience, they've got good stories to tell, they've got a rich life that can impact people. But the difference and the challenge that I see is how they show up or how they share that. And I want to talk a little bit to that. And so today is going to be a little bit of a tutorial. And maybe I can give you a second. If you have a pen, you have a piece of paper, just maybe quickly run and grab it. I will waffle a little bit so that you have time. But even if you just take your phone to capture some of these thoughts. So I want to talk about an elevator pitch. Um, but before I get there, the best way to show up is to show up early. And so that already, if you talk about impact, you talk about business to business value, the fact that the person shows up early indicates that he is an honoring person. The fact that somebody shows up late for no reason, specifically if they give no reason and consistently late, maybe there's a trace of dishonor. Um, and I always say and I've got, we are four in our family, and I'm the only male. And it's very rare that we will ever be late anyway, because it's the philosophy that if we arrive early, and even the way you dress, that shows you honor the person that you're visiting. And the opposite is true. If you arrive late, it possibly comes from the place where you think a little bit more of yourself, and you have the right to come late. You have the right to disturb um, what is already taking place. And often these people coming late are the ones who make the biggest noise when they settle, and everybody has to cease and pause for them to settle. And I find that extremely dishonoring. So the first thing to that you need to work on when you show up, or show up when you show up, is arrive early. And so I want to talk about an elevator pitch. So, what is an elevator pitch? So, an elevator pitch is a good one, should last no longer than a short elevator ride from one floor to another, about 20 to 30 seconds. Hence the name elevator pitch. So it's a well-known term. So there are three things that's important. It should be interesting, it should be memorable, and it should be succinct. And you will find that you cannot compromise on any one of these things in order for it to be impactful. So it must be interesting, it must be memorable, and it must be succinct. In other words, very short and to the point, right? As they say, apply the KISS rule. Keep it short, simple, and simple, right? That's important. Another way of um, other people use the KISS to keep it short, stupid. In other words, just keep it short. Um, so in that statement, you need to explain what makes you you, or what makes your organization and your product or your idea extremely unique. Doesn't have to be very unique. It just needs to. This is the thing about being different and having a differentiated aspect to your personality and your business. You don't have to be extremely different. You just have to be a little different to make an impact. So always remember. So don't focus on making such a big gap in how different you are that you're actually becoming silly or um, too different. Um, but focus rather on the one thing that makes you different and what makes you unique. Right. So it's very important to understand what people buy. And I go with Simon Sinek, and he says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And often, when you just listen to people tomorrow or in the next week, how people introduce themselves, they often go to what they do and how they do it, right? So always remember, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe or why you do, right? Simon, in another way, says that people don't care what you do and how you do it. What they really care is why you do what you do. And so that's a very good place to start. Focus on why you do what you do. So I do leadership and business coaching, I do facilitation, I help leaders and I help businesses experience the next level or experience possibilities that they've never experienced. But before I go and explain that, I always start with, if people say, what do you do? I say, let me pull back a little bit and rather talk about why I do what I do. And this is normally how I introduce myself. I believe leadership and enterprises makes a massive difference in the world. And then I would say, that's why I do coaching. That's why I have conversations with leaders and businesses. That's why I believe leadership and businesses needs to be strategic. And I love having that conversation. But I always start. Rayan and Lisha, you will, if you think about it very carefully, at the network events, whenever I'd introduce myself, I always start with, let me say, I believe leadership and businesses makes a massive difference. Okay. What's the problem? There is a problem. And the problem addresses why people show up wrongly, unintentionally, but they show up wrongly. And the impact that they make is not as powerful in that first couple of seconds. So the first problem is we believe we were given permission to share our whole story simply because we are present somewhere. Just because I'm there, I have a right to share my story, or people are interested in my story. That's a massive problem. Second problem is that we lack an intense belief of the core benefit of our product, of our service, of who we are. And this results in overshare, thinking that we can convince people by sharing everything that's in our head. Some people even go on talking about the problems in the world. Some people talk about the different products they have on their shelves, right? Just remember, and this is a very harsh statement, people don't care about that. They really don't care. What people actually care about is when you engage with them is, I've got a problem, I've got a challenge. Can you solve my problem? And are you able to convince me within 20 seconds that you can solve my problem? And so the best thing that you can do is to work. And I'm actually going to run an extensive workshop on this, Jacques, is to work on what your core benefit, whether it's your product, your service, who you are, so that you don't overshare, right? That leads us to the next challenge. We assume more is better, but in this case, less is the best. So the less you share, the better and bigger impact you make. Right? Basically, what you want to do in this little statement is you want to pull people into your space. We assume more is better, but in this case, less is best. The other big challenge, and as we see it in the network, you have such a lot of things that you do that you actually don't know what you're doing. It's like jack of all trades. And I always say to people, if you say to me, I box and I sell cars and I work on motorbikes, but I also coach. And by the way, I also sell peanuts. So we do a whole lot of stuff, and I can understand where that comes from. That often comes from that we want to make money and we want to fill the financial gaps. But my question to you is always, if I'm going to call you with a problem, what would I call you for? And unless you can answer that question in a very short 20-second statement, and it's about one thing, you still have too many things that you're doing. And then the other thing that it's most probably said in the points before, we actually don't know what we do and what we offer. We really don't know. So I have a saying, and it's a tough saying, if you cannot explain who you are and what you do in 20 seconds to your mother-in-law, who is 80, you don't know what you're doing. It's a very, very tough test. And Jacques, you will test me on that when we ask for comments again. Right. So here, this is where I need you to get a pen and a piece of paper. So there are different components to an elevator pitch, right? And I'll give the component and I'll give you the example, kind of like in my case. The first one is you greet and you state your name. You greet and you state your name. You say, "Hi, I'm Al." You greet and you state your name. The second component is you state the name of your company or the role that you play or what you do. So, hi, I'm Al. I own a company called Imogen Leadership and Enterprise Strategist. So you state the name of your company and the role that you play. Thirdly, you state what you believe. And Jacques, there are different ways of compiling an elevator pitch. I just find this one works for me, or a combination of this. So the third one is you state what you believe. And I would say, I believe leadership and enterprises makes a massive difference. You've heard that before. Fourthly, you state what you do. Only now do you share what you do. You say, and in my case, I would say, therefore, I have conversations with leaders and businesses through coaching and training so that they can make that difference. And then fifthly, share who your ideal client is if you need to. So this is like an extra little bit. So that if you're at a network event or if you with a client or somewhere where you can share what you do, make it clear as to who your ideal client is, right? And in my case, my ideal client are those who reached a certain level of success yet believe more is possible. Okay. So let me repeat those um, few components of an elevator pitch. Now remember, you need to say all of this in 20 seconds. Greet and state your name very shortly. Hi, I'm Al. Not I'm Al, Uncle Eric's son-in-law, and my mother-in-law is the Premier of South Africa. Uh, that's just hi, I'm Al. Second one is state the name of your company and your role or the role that you play. I own a company called Imogen, and uh, uh, it's about leadership and enterprise strategies. State what you believe. I believe leadership makes a difference. State what you do. I have conversations with leaders and businesses, blah, blah, blah. And if you want to share who your ideal client is, right? In my case, our ideal client are those who reached a certain level of success, yet believe more is possible. Right. So I've got an illustration. So if you draw a line, and I'm going to end with this illustration, just to prove the point of what works and what doesn't work, and what it sounds like, what doesn't work, what it sounds like, right? So if you draw a line kind of like on a piece of paper, but it's towards the top half of your paper, in other words, it's like 3/4 way up. Just draw a line there, right? Now, above that line is what you call your 20 to 30 second elevator pitch, the statement that will last. Okay, so just do that if you can. Right. So above that line, on top of that line is 20 seconds. Let's say 20 to 30 seconds. That's where greeting and name is. That's where you state your company and your role. That's where you talk about what you believe. Um, that's where you talk about what you do in one short sentence, and you can even share my ideal client. Now, I tried this 2 Saturdays ago, and it takes about 30 seconds. And even with that, I waffled a little bit. So you can get it done between 20 and 30 seconds. That's above the line. Anything below that line, the illustration says it takes forever and it makes little impact. And in that moment, it's the least impact that you can make. Anything below that line. And I actually have a picture on my screen that I just pulled from Google. It's a bunch of guys. There's a podium, and there's one guy with a wheelbarrow and a fork. There's one guy with a broom. Actually, three guys with a broom, and the whole room is filled with those conversation bubbles that you get in cartons, and the whole room is filled with blah 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 blah. So anything that doesn't fit into those 5 components above the line, what you think you're making an impact. What people hear is blah, 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 blah. Why do they hear that? It's because they switched off already, right? Jacques, and that's it. The point is, when we have a moment to show up anywhere, whether it's at a network event with a client, with another person that we meet for the first time, even just meeting with somebody with coffee, it is important to show up when you show up. And the best way to do it is with this elevator pitch. Agree? State your name. State your role that you play in your company. More important than any one of that, state what you believe. And then in one sentence, talk about what you do. And then possibly an ideal client. Thank you, Jacques.
Thank you, Alistair. I think it's a nice framework. And yeah, I'm sure that as you were talking and sharing, quite a few of us in the room want to ask some questions or make some comments But yeah, it's rather interesting. And I think the challenge out there is Al said that what we need to say in 20 seconds to our mother in laws and they understand it fully. That's the challenge. Yes, any thoughts from anyone in the audience tonight?
So, Jacques, so just in terms of humility, so I believe in that statement. You can't explain what you do to your mother-in-law in 20 seconds and she's over 80. You don't know what you're doing. My mother-in-law thinks I'm a driver. I'll leave it there.
Sorry, Al, I forgot about the age, the 80.
No,
any
it's
any
fine.
thoughts, anyone? Any questions? Any comments? Maybe you have an alternative view. Share with us. Well, it's while we wait, what certainly catches my attention is after you state your name, you state the name of your company, and maybe briefly the role or the title that you hold, is stating what you believe before sharing what you do. And I think that's the interesting thing for me.
Mm.
And it then loops back into, as you said, Simon Sinek is really about sales is about um, telling the people or sharing with people or your potential client base of sharing with them why you do what you do. What is the purpose behind your
Yeah,
product or your service or your company, for that matter? So, Rayan, you may
absolutely.
speak.
I evening all. I hope everyone's doing well. So just from based on what Al speaking about, I can fully understand because I would say I felt fault in that, and I believe in the way you present yourself and the way you show up. It makes a big impact in the way you dress, and I would say by what you say as well. Very short and sweet, who you are and what you do. I found that in life, nobody needs to know what you're doing as long as you're making a small impact and in that in that sentence making a difference.
Yeah,
So one example also that I picked up also in terms of sales, people perhaps look at the image, my sales pitch or advertisement mechanism. I would always put a picture out there, not put a price on it, and then people would be attracted by that.
yeah.
So it's
And
so the image, yeah.
that's right. And Rayan, you must have done something right because you were headhunted. Jacques, by the way,
Mm.
this guy was headhunted in Australia. He's going to Australia. So you must
Seriously.
have done something right somewhere that got people's attention. And you know what? I won't say you know you're good, but sometimes what I do, um, all I do is I greet and I give my name and I tell people what I believe. I said, "Hi, I'm Al." Even at other network events, I say, "Hi, I'm Al, and I believe leadership and enterprises makes a massive difference in the world. Thank you." And I sit down. And you know what happens? Somebody says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, tell us more." And when you get that, you know you hook people in. So whatever you share then is then by their permission because they asked you for more. Or somebody said, "You just gave a very brief introduction. It was very interesting what you believe. I'd like to hear more about what you do." And hence another meeting said, "Why don't we have a coffee?" And often you get a client like that. And even the coffees, for those people who know me, know I believe in coffees. Let me just see here. So now I believe in coffee. So somebody says, um, I need to, we need to talk. I said, well, let's do coffee. Sometimes I do things like 5 coffees, um, because that's an elongated elevator pitch. That's an elongated pitch. Why? because you want to work on relationship before you start doing work and collaboration, specifically if it's a collaboration, right? Um,
Al,
so yes,
sorry for interrupting. Lishay would like to say something.
thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hi,
Hi,
Lishay.
Lishay.
Hi. I just want to add on to people that speak. Working in a school environment, I don't really like to speak about myself because there's a culture where people they use what you say and they turn it around and they say, "Oh, she's like that," or they make judgment according to how much you put out there. So I've learned that it's very important to listen
Hmm.
because that is where you pick up the most things that you wouldn't pick up if you kept talking or if you keep talking. You miss such important information sometimes because it's always about yourself, about yourself. So you miss important details of things that are impacting you at the end of the day, coming from the outside environment because you didn't take the time to listen, properly.
Yeah.
So I don't like to speak about myself, but I try to say as much as I need to say, not over the top. And I think a lot of people don't have that quality. They think, I guess it's a type of self entitlement, if I may say so.
Hmm.
They feel self entitled to establish who they are and to basically tell people, I am better than you, if I can say that. I hope I'm not offending anyone by saying that, but
No, you're
they
just speaking the
it's
truth.
a sense of inferiority when people approach you and they want to say more than what they listen to what you have to say. I think they feel inferior towards others. I don't know. I picked that up throughout my life, being around people, also studying psychology. I notice these things. So yeah, can call it a gift or sometimes a curse.
Yeah. And if I can respond, Lishay, so if you if you like the best, I think the best thing to do is to just introduce you by greet people and say, this is my name and this is what I believe, right? So it's not just safe because you don't overshare. Because as you say, people use things against you, right? So you just share. And what I find is that you create more interest because there's a mystical component to it when you just do that short thing. People know there's more to you because of just that one statement, but you didn't share it, so they will engage you, and that's where the component of listening come in, Lishay. Is so what I normally do is when somebody comes to me, oh, load shedding is over. When, so normally when somebody comes to me, I'm very interested in what you say. I'd like to meet and to hear more about what you do. I said that would be lovely, but I'm more interested in what you do. So I quickly turn it around. And what that does is it shows empathy and it shows people that you're not just interested in your own story, but you're interested in another person's story. And
Yes,
it's often the thing that clinches a client, if that's
correct.
the
Yes, that's where I was going with
yeah.
talk.
So when you listen, people are more attracted to you than when you speak.
Absolutely,
100%.
I
That's
agree with I
scientifically
agree
proven.
with you, 100%.
Jacques, over to you. Thank you, Lishay.
Thank you.
Well, Al, we over time. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Al. I mean, as in never over talk, and you were saying as you present yourself, whether it's at a networking event, wherever you are, wherever your potential clients are, um, be present, which means you know who you are and what you represent, and less is more. And that's what you said. You actually said less is the best. I like that saying. But be present when less is the best. But the other component of being present is it's a dialogue. You engage, you listen as much as you talk, as Elle was saying. So thank you, Elle, for the practical framework. And it's only as important or valuable when you actually try and apply some of these things. And if you already are and you can add, well, let us know. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. We will be back next week, Monday.